pretty used to it by now.
Well, good morning, Jennifer Folgelsong. Welcome to our EDUC 112 class, and appreciate you being here today. And love your background. Is that up there in Orland?
I actually live in between Orland and Willows, and no, but that will be my backyard someday.
So you have to explain where Orland and Willows. So that's north of Sacramento.
So Willows is an hour and 15 minutes north of Sacramento, and then Orland is probably an hour and 35 minutes north, and I live directly in between them in a little town called Bayless, which is a rural farming community of about 200 people.
Wow. So Corning's known for olives. What's Bayless noted for?
Well, primarily rice was the focus crop, and now we have almonds. A lot of almonds. The majority of the crops are being rotated into almonds. But almonds, as everyone knows, that market is decreasing, and the volumes increase significantly. So we have a little bit of everything.
Not walnuts, but almonds.
Almonds, yes. Walnuts are closer to the river. So we are probably, where I live, we're probably 10 minutes from the Sacramento River. So the closer you get to the river is where the walnuts are, because it's different soil type. And right where we're located is mostly almonds. And
well,
rice.
Why isn't it almonds?
I don't know. I think it's aunt and aunt. In Glenn County, it's almonds. And if you were in Napa County, it's probably almonds. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why Mary, like Merry Christmas and Mary, spelled totally different, are all said the same. So we'll work on that later. Well, listen, you've taken a different career path to get into the world of career tech ed. And I think that's the way it should be. I think a lot of people think they have to be born and bred in career tech ed to lead career tech ed. When we're talking about career tech ed at the K-16 level, you have taken a little different path. Tell us a little about your background.
Well, I graduated from Chico State with a bachelor's of science in psychology, and I imagine that's terribly marketable. I didn't know what I was going to do with that. And then I went on and got my master's in educational psychology with a PPS in academic counseling, because I really liked the counseling component of the high schools. Fortunately, when I came out of my credential program, there weren't a ton of jobs. And therefore, I ended up going back and teaching at a private school in the desert down near Palm Springs. And when I was there, I realized I really wanted to teach. And then I went back and got my K-8 multi-subject. From there, I taught second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and alternative high school. My favorite probably was fourth grade, and my most educational was alternative high school, where it was a single classroom and I taught 9 through 12 students who were failing, which is where I got my first insight into how a comprehensive high school did not meet the needs of every single student, because about the end of the first quarter, I had an influx of students and they were all failing, and they just it wasn't working for them. After that, I got my administrative credential and I became an elementary site principal. And then I became a superintendent, a special education director. And now I'm at CTE department of Butte County Office of Ed, which I think all those experiences led me to CTE, because I see the need for everyday life skills and programs that actually fit 90% of the student population, not just 10.
Yeah, I mean, that background really is deep, and it also is super interesting, because I think sometimes like only special ed people do special ed and only people who are in career tech do career tech ed. I think you got to, it's kind of like being in a restaurant, right? You got to wash the dishes, cook, be the hostess and waiter. And you've done that. That's wonderful. And I'm glad you're in CTE now. And so why do you think they're so valuable for K-12 systems to have, just K-12 to have a good CTE pathway or, a program? Why is it so important to you?
Well, one, I think that the majority of students are kinesthetic learners. Very rarely are students just auditory or visual, and CTE really combines all the modalities into a single concept, and it allows the students to get in and use their hands with the new information that they're using. And so it's different from core in the sense that you learn it and apply it. And I think that's where the value is in career technical education. I think also I don't think, I know fully that 90% of students do not go on to college. So we have right now comprehensive high schools that really cater to 10% of the student population. And when you look at, I mean, if you just look at California, the gap in workforce is so huge that even if every single high school, 90% of those students graduated and went into the workforce, we'd still actually have a gap. So the pathways are really, I think, valuable at the high school level because students can actually find out what they don't like, and they don't waste any time on it once they leave. Because the most times I work with adult learners also, they all tried community college or they all tried college and it didn't work. And now they're back in a technical program trying to get a job and they're 24 years old. I think it would be extremely beneficial to every student in high school to do at least one pathway so they can say, I don't like the welding shop, or I didn't like ag, I don't like being around animals. Okay, well then you know something you didn't know before. Now you can go learn something that is valuable and you can hopefully carry those skills forward. Plus the skills that are enforced through career technical education really do support the socio-emotional learning of students because they're learning to be independent learners, which is the most valuable skill they will ever need. And they're also learning to self-advocate and ask for different aspects of what they need in their learning. And that is an extremely valuable skill in the workforce.
Yeah, and I think also when you talk about how kids, apply, they're also learning. I think you learn by teaching, and a lot of the best pathways, the kids are going to competitions where they're actually teaching the panels or showing off their work or talking to people about what they're doing, and you really have to know what you're learning when you do that. Good stuff. I'm a voc ed and career tech, but especially voc ed back in the 50s started for the kids that were failing about their junior year, right? Maybe senior year. What grade levels do you think we should start really exposing kids to career tech ed?
I believe career tech ed is like literacy. They need early exposure and they need it often. I really do think that project-based learning should be introduced like at the elementary level. I do think with Common Core, there is a really big place for project-based learning because it really starts to teach that concept of mastery very early, which mastery is you can turn around and teach the skill. So if we worked on that concept with our elementary students, and then in middle school, I think students should start career exploration. They should do interest inventories and they should start narrowing down. I like this, but I don't like that. I also think that you can incorporate the use of what I'll call skills camps or career camps at a middle school level, which allows students to get short-term introduction to very specific skills to see if it's of interest to them. And I think at the high school level, you should have multiple pathways. And I think students should have the opportunities to work in what I'll call academies, where they go into something in the summertime or a break time, and they learn some very specific targeted skills that are associated with an industry of their interest level. And then they move that out from there. And then they can just add those academies as they go through. And they can also, what I'll call upskill. They can get some certificates that show that they were gaining skills while they were in high school, which would help them even with a college application or a job application, whichever. But it really helps them start to solidify some really good life skills, like showing up to work on time.
Yeah,
it's really important. It's super important, but it's the number one complaint. We work with a lot of employers on our advisory boards, and that's their number one complaint, is that people don't show up on time or they won't come back from lunch, which is a completely and utter foreign concept to me, but they deal with that commonly. So I think that, middle school and high school are a really good place to start solidifying the importance of showing up and being responsible.
Well, I mean, you're an administrator. I'd have all my hair if everybody just showed up for work on time and worked, but that's the beauty of being a leader, right? You have to get people to show up on time, even when they're 55, or like me when I'm late for a minute today. Hey, listen, you talked about your background with vulnerable youth. And again, I don't like to pigeonhole kids, but why do you think it's even more special for kids to be exposed to CTE that are really struggling in school with the same old?
Well, I think number one, they get to focus on skills and not academic abilities. It's easier for students who have not done well academically to focus on skills because they don't feel like they're lacking. And the other thing is the learning environment does not look like your typical classroom, which is you typically, for the most part, where vulnerable students have been unsuccessful. So put them in a different learning environment that actually meets their needs. And I think their skills start to grow. And the other thing is a lot of those students do not have role models who are showing them the importance of showing up on time, being responsible, etc. They have a lot of things that are out of control in their home environment. So bring them into the school environment and teach them how they can be perceived and how they can control their environment. And I think that gives them some really good foundation for things beyond what I'll call classroom learning. The other thing is incorporated with work-based learning and CTE is a really strong component of the socio-emotional learning, because they're learning about themselves, which is the number one thing you need to know when you start looking for a career, or you need to know about yourself. And I really think that career technical education gives them multiple opportunities daily to really learn about themselves. And that's what a strong program includes. That is not on paper, but it is really probably the most valuable thing that students walk away with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everything I learned in a restaurant, right? I worked there since I was 14, and all the way up to bartending while I was 24, and just really learned all the skills. But mostly I found myself as a hardworking person, and I think everyone else feels that way. And I know you work on the farm a lot, and I tease you because you wear high heels during the day, but you can put the boots on. And you know, when you're out on that farm, that work ethic you learn, it makes you a better leader, makes you a better employee, probably a better civic person too. But let's switch, Jennifer, because I think, you know, my philosophy is people fund people, right? Not ideas. This is a class where this class is going to actually present a legislative bill or a policy in their passion area around career tech ed. So you know this, that I think it's a little easier to get funding, but only a rare amount of people get continuous funding, and they have a skill set to do that. And I think that's why before I left, I was proud to put you in that director chair, because I really felt you were the one who was going to be, or help you get in that director chair, because you have those skills. I try to tell the students, it's one thing to say, hey, I'm going to invent the pet rock, right? But how do you continue to maintain the pet rocks thing? So to you, what's critical for maintaining long-term funding? Because you have a lot of contracts and grants that have been around for years. What's the key?
I think the number one thing is relationships. Relationships really solidify how you can maneuver things. So, and obviously you gave me the questions before, so I have a little bit of time to think about it. So when you have a really strong relationship with an agency, regardless of what it is, if something's going to come your way, they will always let you know when there's new funds or if you're going to lose funds. So that allows you to maneuver your budget the way you need to. There's always restrictions in K-12 because we have these deadlines that we can't lay a lot of people off unless it's in this window and these type of things. So the stronger relationship you build, the greater chance you have of being able to leverage the funds that you receive. The other thing I think that's really important is if you mess up, you own it, and you just say it. You know, we were in a position in the CTE department that the previous director did not have a really good relationship with CDE. And I came in after that, and I had to go in and basically just be really humble and say, I know this was messed up. This is where we want to take it. And this is the relationship that we want to develop with you as our partner in this work, and let them, you know, come back with whatever angst or, you know, I guess problems they had with the previous relationship, and then take what they wanted and what we wanted and filter through that information and develop a high quality relationship that would be long lasting. Because really the thing you have to consider is if your relationship falls apart with an agency, you're actually hurting students. So you need to be really conscientious about that. And the students are the reason why we do everything we do. And sometimes that gets lost a little bit in the shuffle. And so you have to make sure that it stays in the forefront. The other thing I think with funding that's really, really important is to think outside the box. It's not always the state. It's not always the Fed. You know, Butte County is in a pretty unique situation right now because we've had campfire, another fire, and then a pandemic. So we have a lot of money actually coming into our county that didn't exist before for a lot of different reasons. And you need to go develop those relationships locally so you can kind of access that funding. And sometimes it's, you know, in this series of donations. Sometimes it's a long-term grant that you could get locally. Another avenue that we've recently explored that turned out to be extremely valuable is we had a camp product, and Boys and Girls Club, for example, wanted it. So they prepaid us to do it for them. So, you know, and you can get prepaid. So we didn't, all we did was have the admin time in. It was a fantastic model that actually has continued to provide a lot of fruit for our department. And then the other thing is, how can you leverage this fund with this fund, and how can you maximize the fund on the backside?
Yeah.
And then how do you use your resources? And your resources in a department are always your people. It's your greatest asset.
Well, Jennifer, I think two things I want to add to that for you is you're a businesswoman first, not an educator, right? The first time I met you, I knew that you were different. You had a different mindset of being entrepreneurial, connecting the dots. And again, there's a lot of people, there was 105 districts affected by wildfire last year. Only a handful have told their story to obtain funding for their kids beyond what they hand you, right? So you got to, that's all about being a business model and a mindset. And I think you and there's some folks at Butte County, when that came, that's the way we were. We hired people like that. Our students are looking to, I'm trying to teach them that's the key to legislation, policy, and grants is you just got to think of what it's a business. It's an entrepreneurial mindset, and you have to work on your leadership and your skills and your story to do that. And I think you always do that so well. Hey, Lincoln, what do you think speaking of leadership, give me what you think are, you mentioned relations. What's the 5 traits of a great leader? I mean, you worked under the greatest leader you've ever will experience in Dwayne Newman, Tim Taylor. No, but tell me, what are the five traits that you think are the most important?
Well, I have a top 3, and then I have 2 after that. But I think number 1 is humility.
Yeah.
You have to be humble, and you have to know where you're going and what you're doing. And sometimes there's no place for ego in education. It really would be more of what I would call a block than a pathway. Yeah. The other thing is you have to have high expectations for your people, your programs, how you budget, basically with everything you do. And as a leader, you have to model that. I mean, if you don't want your people to show up late, then don't you ever show up late, those type of things. The other thing is consistency. You have to be consistent. If you say it's important for you to have a relationship with your administrators, then show them how it's important. And how are you going to do that? For example, I meet with my administrators one-on-one every single week. And then we also have a team meeting every single week. So our team knows what everybody else is doing. And then I meet with them individually to make sure their needs are being met. Right now, I'll truthfully say, I think I have the best team I've ever worked with right now. And because of that relationship that I have with them, the pandemic didn't stop us from a darn thing. All we did was transition out of an office and into our homes. And then everything stayed. I mean, we haven't missed a deadline. We've gotten extra funding. I mean, it's just, you have to be able to function, at that level. And that comes from consistency. And probably my fourth thing on that list is a clear concept. When no matter what you're building, teams, systems, programs, you have to know what the capacity you have, where you want to go with your capacity, how you would sustain that, and then what is the scalability of that? So for example, you don't want to produce what I'll call a one-off. Like you don't want to do it one time and you get a result and nothing comes of it after that. That is a waste of resources, mostly of your staff typically, and also a waste of time that doesn't produce a long-term effect for students. So if you always keep those 3 things in mind, you will always be producing, and it will always have a greater impact than what it is today. The other thing is a filter. There are times as a leader, you get so much stuff thrown at you. You have to filter through it, and you have to say, this is a priority right now, that is not. And most recently, we've come in with our department, we had someone resign a position and 2 people out on maternity leave. So in my position right now, I'm technically covering 4 positions. My normal job, 2 admin, a fiscal person, and a SWP coordinator. So in that, you just have to filter and you have to say, I'm not able to do that right now, but this is when I'll be able to do it. And then I think that comes with that high expectation. If you say it's going to be done on Friday the 13th, for example, you finish it on the 12th. You always outperform your own timelines. And that's really key in working through relationships with people too, because sometimes a lot of stuff comes at you, especially right now during the pandemic, a lot of emotional stuff coming our way as leaders. You just have to filter through and then ask those people those really good questions about, okay, what do you need from me? Because that's where I can help you. I mean, there's so much stuff. Really key to ask good questions.
Yeah, sorry about that. But your 5 traits, I love the fact you start with relationships, because it's a people business. I don't care what you do. If leadership's a people business, no matter how cutthroat, whatever you're in. But I love the fact that you didn't. Most people have the same 4 or 5 leadership traits, and I like the fact you had different ones, including the filter one. Boy, people really are getting tested right now with they're at their wits' end, and that word humility that you talked about really is, I think, the core of a great leader, not just a leader. Good stuff. Well, let me give you the last one, and I always throw these at you. I think when you got hired, I taunted you a lot, going, "Come on, this is a man's world, career tech ed. It's like, it's the guy pounding the nails, the jackhammers." But we're starting to see much, I think, more diverse leadership in career tech ed, where it's not just the white male. I still think that's the power drive at some certain levels. So for our students that are in here, you're a woman leading one of the best really one of the best career tech programs in the country. I know you think about that because I dropped that on you in the beginning. Any tips about women being in leadership positions and really those, what do they call that, the non-traditional jobs? And especially in career tech ed, I think there's a lot of still, let's put the women in nursing, right? Let's put the women in dental, and they can't be jackhammering or working in engineering. So that's your swan song, is little for the women in our class in particular. How do you maintain that as the clouds over your head?
Well, I think that the number one thing to consider is that traditional is non-traditional now. So I think that there's more opportunity now for non-traditional than there's ever been before. Myself, I consider the fact that I grew up on a farm, with my brother and I, and we did all those things on the farm together, and there was a lot of things, but it was very traditional in my community that women still did A, B, and C, and that was, you went to college, but it wasn't really to get an education, it was to find a spouse, those type of things. I think when you look at it though, this is what it always comes down to, is focus on your goal, no matter if you're male or female, right? You will meet people, and I wrote this down, and it's about know who they are, develop that relationship for the strength that it can provide for you, either as a person or personally or professionally. And then when you're really focused on your goal, it's always about what are you building, what are you maintaining, and what are you growing? And if you focus on that with whatever you're doing, and especially in career tech ed, because it's going to blow wide open in the next 5 to 10 years, because there's a lot of money behind it, there's a lot of focus on it, and thanks to the pandemic, we now have an urgency around non-traditional education. There is such a strength in knowing who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are, and go out and backfill it the right way.
Yeah.
I have a weakness too. I as a leader, I'm a big picture person. And then I have people on my team who are just phenomenal with details. Like I can say, this is where we're going. And then we filter through all that and we get down to the nitty gritty, and they love the nitty gritty. And I like the big idea. So don't be afraid to backfill your weaknesses and amplify your strengths. And every single person you come across has strengths and weaknesses. Figure out how that works together with where your organization's going, what you can help them with and what they can help you with. And then all of a sudden you have a bond that's really unbreakable, and your programs are soaring, your students are getting what they need. And it's just, and then it's kind of like what I call the Bermuda Triangle is the wrong thing, but it's like this swirling thing that just keeps moving and moving and moving without any breaks. And that's where the sweet spot is with programs and education, in my opinion.
Well, this has been great for our students. I really appreciate that. And again, I think collectively it is about leadership, and that people continue to fund your programs because of the things we talked about today, and it really help our students out. So, hey, I know it's your day off. Gonna say goodbye to you and check out. And on behalf of our class, thanks so much, Jennifer. I wish we were face-to-face because you can meet all these great students. So maybe next year you can do that. Have a good
Thank
day
you.
off. Take care.
Thanks.
See ya.